FinCom.
He timed it perfectly too. Right
Yeah,
on
it's a bad
cue.
night, Steve. You got a serious critic. So toughest questions are yet to come.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I don't see anything for open forum unless Lucy wants to chime in again. So our 7:05 agenda item is the town manager recommended budget adjustments. Jody, do you want to take that, or Dan?
Sure. Thank you. And Dan's going to end it. But so since we prepared the budget and presented it to all of you a couple months ago, I believe now, there's been a few adjustments that we wanted to run through with you. So one was the HR assistant, which we did make a part-time, which had been an accommodation back to full-time with select board approval. And so we needed to add another $1,122 to that. The other is the Neshoba Tech assessment, which did go up slightly more than we had expected. So that's the $35.32. Recycling processing services. We were getting money back for some of our recycling products, but we don't know where it's going. So we'd like to put a little cushion in there. I think we did have to pay something last month. So we just want to put a little cushion of $5,000 in there. And then health insurance, we had a balance of about $50,050, and we thought we should put it in the health insurance trust unless the select board advise us otherwise before we're ready to close this up and be done with it. So we just parked it there. And we do plan to report to the finance committee and the select board on the health insurance trust, but it won't be until we have our first quarter of bills and payments in, and that will, I think, be, is that June, Dan, I believe?
Yeah, that'll be June.
So then we'll give you a report of where we're at. So that was a $59,704 increase over what we had proposed. But it's a balanced, balanced budget. So what gave us the surplus? Well, we did a little reorg when Dwayne left and went to Framingham. We had always kind of thought that the Parks and Grounds and Cemetery really belonged in DPW. So we transferred those responsibilities from Parks and Recreation and put it in DPW under Steve Cronin. And so that was an increase that I gave Steve for taking on those departments and staff. The next line item, I'm not really positive about. I think we had a little miscommunication, which we need to sort out tomorrow. But what we did is we downgraded the highway superintendent from a 7 grade to a 6 at the last town meeting. So the range for a 6, I believe, goes to about 119, give or take. Dan, does that sound good? We have not hired this person. We've advertised. We're trying to create an assistant DPW director at the same grade. We did take it to the Personnel Advisory Committee. We will put it on the town meeting warrant. But so I think we can just leave that number, but there's no one in that position. So I'm not sure where that will end up. But we gave 117,000 in case that's where we end up. So there's a little bit of fluidity there. We did promote the parks supervisor to oversee the parks crew, and the next two items are that person's promotion split between 2 budgets. The director, as I said, we did take some responsibilities away. So that resulted in a decrease of $15,953. I did promote Michelle Collette to that position. We did go to Personnel Advisory and they did agree with the reduction, and that will be on the town meeting warrant. The assistant director, we're still bargaining this with OPIU, so I can't speak too much to this. So I have goals in mind and we've reflected them in the dollars, but I'd rather not get into the specifics because I haven't even put it on the table yet with OPIU, but we're hopeful that this will work out and the director is in full support. And then we just have longevity and recreation, indirect and direct costs. So we pretty much saved approximately 59,704, which is what we are putting in those other budgets. So happy to answer any questions. I did go to the select board in executive session with the plan. They did support it. And we did bargain with the highway unit, and that's all set. I'm just still working on OPIU changes, which is in recreation. So if anybody has any questions, I'll answer them. And otherwise I'll have Dan go into the debt.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
Okay, and our auditors reached out to Jesse and I, our town accountant and I, about the way we are budgeting the stormwater debt that was previously issued through general fund bonds. It's basically the Main Street reconstruction project and the 10-wheel dump truck that we had allocated a portion of stormwater. Essentially, they are telling us that we need to budget that directly in the general fund debt budget. However, we can offset the cost just using direct and indirect costs. So I went back and reconfigured all the direct and indirect costs, and it's a net zero to the bottom line budget, but we're just complying with the auditor's request by moving these funds around between the general fund and stormwater.
Thanks.
Good.
Anybody have any questions on any of that? Heather?
On the debt reclass, is that just because it was pre-existing to the enterprise? And so going forward, it'll be in stormwater? It just is that how that works?
No, when these bonds were issued, we didn't have the stormwater enterprise yet, so the bonds were issued through the general fund. However, portion of these projects are stormwater related, so we had allocated after the fact. And so we just have to do that through direct and indirect costs through the future.
But going forward, that won't be a problem then?
No, there's nothing wrong with what we're doing. It's just the accounting of it.
Anything? Okay, so let's go to our FY23 department budgets. First up is public safety and the tree warden. Any questions for the tree warden? I'm not seeing anything. Let's go to Public Works and Steve Cronin. Hi, Steve.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
So, it's been a year and 9 months since we established the Department of Public Works. I feel like we're making a lot of progress. I think it's pretty fair to say the department looks a lot different than even I had anticipated, but I like the direction we're headed. We've had to react to some staff retirements, some promotions, some departures, and adapt to the pandemic as well. But it's certainly given us an opportunity to make some changes that I will ultimately feel will benefit the town in the long run. We can step through each one of the budgets individually, but on the, specific to the Department of Public Works budget, the only increase we have in there is really for salary increases, cost of living increases that are anticipated for fiscal year 23. No changes to the expense line items for that budget. Any questions there?
I just had a comment that you mentioned that you were going to be looking at consolidation of the townwide fleet maintenance, which I think is fabulous. So I was really happy to see that.
Yep. So we've had some preliminary discussions with both the police chief and the fire chief. The fire chief has indicated that the staff that they have in house right now that's currently doing their vehicle maintenance is probably going to be retiring in the next 2 to 3 years. So we're going to certainly evaluate what's needed in terms of emergency vehicle certifications. I think there's going to be a bit of a learning curve for our mechanics in terms of hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles. So that's something else that we're going to have to evaluate. I've had conversations with Chief Chambers. He was relatively new to the position at the time, so wanted a little bit of time to sort of evaluate his fleet and what their needs are. But I certainly expect over the next couple months and year that we'll start to evaluate the opportunity for fleet consolidation. We're also going to be bringing a request before the Finance Committee, I think, moving forward, along with Paul Fox, to look at a computerized maintenance management system that would certainly support fleet maintenance. So, we'll be bringing that forward, I think, in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, great. Does anybody have any other questions that would be under Steve? I'm thinking, well, engineering department, Paul's here, highway, snow and ice.
I just have one.
Sure, go ahead, Dennis.
All right, Steve, I have a question for you. If you do go forward with that consolidation of the fleets, how do you, what's your plan for dealing with the mechanics? Will you be repairing the fire apparatus as well as the police vehicles? And if you do, how many, is there any sort of a specialized aspect to the mechanics you're going to have to hire or what?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're certainly going to have to evaluate staff and I guess what our needs are. In terms of police and fire vehicles, they have to have an emergency vehicle technician certification. There are a number of different certifications for, depending on the type of equipment and ambulances, whether they're ladder trucks or, have integrated pumps and things like that. So, I think there's probably, at least a half a dozen to a dozen different certifications that are required for those vehicles. So we're gonna have to evaluate all that, and what's going to be needed for the equipment we currently have and what we're looking to add in the future.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, I'll go on to street and lights. Anybody, any street lights? Not seeing anything. Recycling, solid waste, any questions there? Nope. Wastewater treatment management. How about cemetery? Okay, on to culture and recreation. Library. Ellen, I'm sure you have updates for us.
Hi, good evening. Yes. So, I think looking back at the financial pictures for the library budget that ended in FY20 and FY21, there were some real high water marks. Thank you for 2 new heat pumps, which of course distorted the budget a little bit. But on the other hand, we had the wonderful influx of COVID funds that helped us pay for COVID products that kept our budget down in FY21. We also had a wonderful legislative grant from Senator Kennedy for $16,000+ just for the purpose of remote juvenile programming. And that allowed us to basically run a production studio out of the library so that in addition to story walks and outside Mother Goose times and the browse tent and the grab bags and everything we were doing, we were able to zoom our way into the households of Westford children. We held down on some replacing of retiring staff and relocating staff. We held down our paging budget for 2 years. This is no longer the case this fiscal year, but for 2 years, the Board of Library Commissioners waived the materials requirement that said we had to spend 15% of our budget on books and materials. That allowed us to give funds back to the town. And we also waived Sunday hours for 2 years. We worked our way through the spring of 2021 prior to fully opening, and we were held to a number of sector-specific guidelines and specific ways of managing traffic in the building, decals, taking out 3 out of every 4 chairs, plexiglass stands, signage. If you weren't looking at this weekly like those of us managing were, you may not be aware that we were heavily regulated as to how we would open back up during COVID. And of course, this held down our foot traffic. So I think that the important statistic that I'd like to share now, the most recent normal year, FY19, was also our year of highest circulation. We circulated over 474,000 materials, which is 17.4 items per capita. for every Westford resident. So if you didn't take out your 17.5 items, someone else did. This year, as we look at our statistics through February, we are within 200 items of that same number. And that in a year when we haven't been open for Sunday hours. So we have roared back to exactly where we were pre-pandemic. We're still working our way to get our building back and fully handling the community groups. In the past, we've had 5 to 6 meeting room reservations a day. And at the moment, we're still doing internal programming and holding down some of our attendance in our meeting rooms. So the big change for FY23 is we restore Sunday hours. Otherwise, it's a pretty vanilla budget. It has the projected increases where I think all the unions are resettling, but there are projected increases for exempt staff. We'll be awaiting the outcome of the CWA and the OPEIU contracts. Basically, we restore the Sunday hours that we have not had for the last 2 years. And we again are being held to the regulatory language by the Board of Library Commissioners that maintains that we must be open a certain number of hours for our population. Right now, those are 50 hours per week for 9 months of the year. And we must spend 15% of our budget on materials.
I had one question. The number of hours that you have to stay open and the percent that you need to spend on books, did that increase or change with our new census numbers?
That will not change until Westford's population hits 25,000, and it will not change the moment the odometer turns from 24,999. The year that the Board of Library Commissioners uses the census that formally says Westford has now hit 25,000 will be the year that we must offer 59 hours a week of service. And we're currently offering 55. We have to offer 50 at the moment. So we will need to open Friday mornings in the future. That's projected in the budgets for FY24 or FY25. We don't quite know when that will hit. However, that increase in hours is offset by a decrease in the percentage of our budget that we have to spend on books and materials. And actually, it costs the town less to offer the hours and see a decrease down to 13% for the book budget. So again, and I must add, there's a 3-year waiver to attain that new hourly requirement. So we would have time to ease into that increased service week. We would see it coming. We could budget for it. And in budgeting essentially $22,000 for personnel, we also would be saving $23,000 in materials. So we would see it coming. We've talked about it a long time. We could ease into it over a number of years. And we will be waiting for some bureaucratic formal census declaration that Westford is now over 25,000 population.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much, Ellen. Okay. Parks and Grounds, we're back to Steve. Anybody have questions on that? Or Steve, do you have anything you want to add?
No, the only thing I think I would add is that, next year, Dan and I have already had some conversations that we're going to look at some opportunities with cemetery and parks and grounds to sort of, maybe consolidate those budgets or streamline them in a way that we're not splitting things among various departments. Right now, our AP is being split among multiple budgets, so that can be a little bit challenging and cumbersome. So we think there might be some, efficiency and time saving, at least in payroll and accounts payable, if we look at the structure of those and maybe doing things a little bit differently, but something that we'll evaluate over the course of the next year.
Great. Historical Commission, anybody have any questions for that? Dennis.
Hey, Steve, I just want to put a plug in now that you guys have taken over the town beaches. When you have a chance, can you look at Forge Village Beach? I mentioned this to your predecessor, Jim Duane. A lot of people use that in the summer now, and I know that every once in a while, when I go down there with my own grandkids, a lot of people are having problems with some of the rocks and some items on the beach. I think the beach is going to need to be dredged underneath it, or put some sand over it or whatever. But since you got it now, I figured I'd bring it to your attention, okay?
Yeah, we'll certainly take a look at it. We did do some dredging in the channel.
I know you did, yeah.
But yeah, we'll look at the beach itself and see if there's any opportunity there to do anything.
Thank you.
Anything else on Parks and Grounds or Historical Commission? Not seeing anything. Okay, so on to the enterprise funds. Water enterprise. Steve, are you back up again? Any questions?
It's pretty smooth.
Not seeing anything. Recreation enterprise. Oh, Jody, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce our new recreation director, who is Michelle Collette, in the orange scarf there waving at us. And I do want to tell you, Michelle has actually worked for the town for 17 years in our rec department and done a magnificent job. And before that, she actually worked for Rodenbush for a few years. So she's got a lot of history with the town. She's not lost a child in all that time. And we're really, really proud to promote her to rec director. And she was just a delight to work with on the reorg. So I just wanted to make sure that you all knew exactly who she was, and go easy on her, because she's, you know, she's learning all this rec enterprise this year. So thank you. And thank you, Michelle.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Jody.
Michelle.
I'm excited about the opportunity. Everyone's been so fantastic and helping me out. And so I'm happy to have a nice position and director title after all these years. So kind of all good, all good.
Great,
So
well, welcome.
thank you.
I actually had a question for the rec enterprise. I think it's rec enterprise. Maybe it's rec department. Now I can't remember. But the assistant rec director, I think, position, is that filled or being filled? Jody?
Yes, so that's what I mentioned earlier. This is an OPIU position, and there's a couple changes that we are planning to negotiate, and we're at the table right now. So I'd rather not speak too directly to them,
Of
but
course. Yep.
it is part of my reorg plan, and we're really optimistic that everything's going to fall into place. So we're happy to share the result once we get done bargaining that. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for rec enterprise? Heather, do you have your hand up? Yep.
A couple of us asked this in the questions, and I'm not really sure who this question gets directed to, but it seems like the schools should be reimbursed by the enterprise when they use the after-school program. It sounded like currently now they weren't.
The schools are not, we don't reimburse them. I didn't know that was, you know, something that was going to have to happen. I can talk more about it, you know, with Jody or Dan, and get back to you, but not quite sure how to respond to that question. I know that
I think Jody may have some ideas. Do you want to let her?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was going to say, Dan, have we ever had discussions with the schools about them charging us for use? I'm not aware that that's happened, but maybe you have, you know?
No, we never had that discussion, but what I will say is that the recreation enterprise has been subsidized by the general fund. So, I mean, this will just be adding to the subsidy if we start transferring money from the enterprise to the school department. So at the end of the day, it's a net zero sort of proposition. So it won't create any more funding just because recreation is subsidized.
Thank you.
All said, Heather. Okay, anybody else? I will mention that I asked for a projection for the rec enterprise through the end of the year, just to make sure that we were on target and that the estimate for next year is in line. And Dan was able to give that to me. Dan, did that go out to everyone or not?
Actually, now you're asking me, I don't believe I sent that out, but I can definitely get that out there.
Okay.
But yes, I did put together a projection as well. It looks like we are going to hit our mark. I worked with Michelle on this, obviously, where we projected our total revenue through the rest of the year and along with the expenses. And it looks like we're going to be, if all falls right, about 132,000 to the good, which will close out to retained earnings at the end of the year. However, that is with the taking into account the 456,000 ARPA funding that was transferred into the budget back in September. So this might be a good time just to give a plug here too, where last year the process, what we had to do was we had to work with the Department of Revenue to come up with a revenue projection for this year's budget, because in FY21 in total we brought in a little over $200,000, which wasn't reflective of the programs we're actually running. So we're gonna have to go through that same process again. We did budget in FY23 as if the programs would be up and running in full again, which is great. However, we do have to go through this exercise. So it could be just like last year. We won't know until we have that initial projection in September of the enrollment from WPC. But once we have that, we can work with the Department of Revenue and figure out if we need to subsidize the rec enterprise with one-time funds or make adjustments to the budget at the special town meeting.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? I don't think so. Stormwater enterprise, anybody have anything for that? I'm not seeing anything. Okay, well, we are on to approval of minutes as far as I can tell, unless anybody has anything else.
Thank
Nope.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Going to
No,
depart.
thanks for answering all those questions. I think that provided a lot of our answers.
You're welcome. Good to see you all. Bye.
Take
Hi,
care,
Jody. Select board, are you gonna adjourn
I was
or are
just
you gonna stick with us?
I don't know if Tom Clay, if he wants to,
We're gonna vote on the.
our clerk, maybe.
Where's Tom?
I think he left. Did he leave?
You take it. You take it, John.
Yeah, I think you're in charge, John.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 24th, 2022?
I thought we were going to maybe take
Yeah.
a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I think,
Andrea's been approving your minutes at your meetings,
Oh,
so
okay.
you can just adjourn.
Okay. Have a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Bye.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay, so our minutes from March 24th, 2022. Did anybody have any comments? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Tom,
Aye.
Dennis,
Aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Ingrid,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Hari,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, I don't think we really have much on the board and committee updates unless somebody has something. I did get a note from Matt Riegert from the Clean Energy Committee that the energy audits are moving along, and they think they may have something in a few weeks. So I assume we'll see that at some point. Okay, our future meetings are coming up. Does anybody have anything else? I think we're kind of done.
Christina, when's the next one? Is it next Thursday or we got a break?
It's next Thursday.
Okay.
Yep, we have one more. That's general government, the health and human services, I think debt. There's one more. Dan.
Unclassified.
Yep.
Unclassified. And WPS is coming back for any follow-up. I think that's about what we've got. And then I think we have a little bit of a break, Dennis, before we get into the articles and the FinCom book, correct, Dan? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, next meeting's May 5th after that.
Okay, so yeah, so we have a bit of a break. Okay, anybody have anything before we adjourn?
Oh, good to go.
Move to adjourn.
Great.
Direction.
All in favor? We'll just wave.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks.
Aye.
See you later. Have a good night.
Good night.